is for you. You can't wear it on your chest, but you can feel it in your heart. And I hope it brings you comfort when this world grows dark. Let it echo through the madness, let the message pull you through. This is our Medal of Honor to you.
And now, Armed Forces Weekly with Donna Lyons on TSPN.
Welcome to Armed Forces Weekly. I'm Donna Lyons. On June 14, 1775, the Continental Congress created the Continental Army to secure our nation's independence and defend our new republic. For 238 years, the Army has been the strength of the nation, with generations of America's most precious treasures stepping forward proudly as soldiers and Army civilians to defend those freedoms as well as those of our friends and allies. Today, the Army is engaged in a struggle against an adaptive and determined enemy. Every American should be proud as their Army celebrates its 238th birthday in the month of June. To defeat this threat and prepare for those of the future, the Army continues to restore balance to the force strained by war. Americans should be proud of the strength of the nation that the Army represents. Today, many soldiers are deployed around the world defending our nation. This is an all-volunteer force service, and they serve conscientiously, regardless of numerous deployments and minimal dwell times. Since the tragic day on September 11th, the force continues to deploy around the globe to take our nation's fight against the enemy on their homeland so we don't have to fight them here. When the American Revolution broke out, the rebellious colonies did not possess an army in the modern sense. Rather, the revolutionaries fielded an amateur force of colonial troops, cobbled together from various New England militia companies. In the spring of 1775, this army was about to confront British troops near Boston, Massachusetts. The revolutionaries had to reorganize their forces quickly if they were to stand a chance against Britain's seasoned professionals. So they enlisted all seaboard colonies. The Massachusetts Provincial Congress appealed to the Second Continental Congress in Philadelphia to assume authority for the New England Army. Money was allocated to support the decision, and companies of the expert riflemen from Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Virginia were directed to march to Boston to support the New England militia. From the Revolutionary War to the current operations taking place around the world, our soldiers remain Army strong with a deep commitment to the core values and beliefs. This 238th birthday month commemorates America's armies, soldiers, families, and civilians who are achieving a level of excellence that is truly Army strong. Being Army strong goes beyond physical endurance and mental readiness. It encompasses unconquerable spirit, high ethical and moral values. These are not only desirable traits in person, but in a nation that wishes to live up to the ideals and visions of its founders. The southern Japanese island of Okinawa has marked the 68th anniversary of the decisive and bloody war battle that accelerated in World War II. Japan surrendered but left the island with a heavy U.S. military presence that is still the source of intense friction and frequent protests. More than 200,000 people are believed to have died in the 1945 battle in Okinawa, and it was the largest amphibious assault in the Pacific War of World War II. The 82-day-long battle lasted from early April until mid-June 1945. Roughly 50,000 U.S. troops are stationed in Japan currently under a mutual security pact. About half, including thousands of U.S. Marines and a major Air Force base, are located in Okinawa. Protests against the U.S. troops are common on Okinawa amid concerns over crowding, troop-related crimes, and the danger of accidents. And a World War II veteran and Battle of Midway survivor, Mr. Joe Saines from Illinois, became an honorary graduate of Recruit Training Command at Naval Station Great Lakes, more than 70 years after enlisting in the Navy. Saines enlisted in the Navy on November 14, 1941, and attended boot camp at Great Lakes. However, after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, 4 weeks into boot camp, Saines was immediately assigned to the destroyer USS Hammond, and he never graduated. During the Pass and Review Recruit graduation ceremony, Captain John Dye, commanding officer of RTC, recognized Sane's service and presented him with an honorary graduation certificate and designated him an honor graduate of the PIR. During the ceremony, 9 divisions comprised of over 700 sailors graduated from RTC, the Navy's only boot camp. The ceremony was attended by more than 1,500 friends and family, including Libby Sanes, Joe's wife of 65 years. Joe was aboard Hammond during the Battle of the Coral Sea. Hammond helped rescue more than 500 sailors from the crippled USS Lexington on June 6, 1944, during the Battle of Midway. Hammond was assisting USS Yorktown recovery after the carrier had been damaged during the battle. While participating in a defensive screen of Yorktown, Hammond was struck by a torpedo from a Japanese submarine and sank in less than 4 minutes. 79 enlisted crew members died, along with 10 of the 14 officers. Joe was one of the lucky ones. He also took part in the Solomon Islands Campaign, the Aleutian Islands Campaign, and the Mariana Campaign before receiving an honorable discharge on November 14, 1947. The wave of sexual assaults and harassment that High Command has described as a crisis for the military has now reached into the chaplain's corps. At Fort Bliss, Texas, last week, Major Jeffrey Allen, a chaplain and 24-year Army veteran, was sentenced by a court-martial jury to 6 months in jail for repeatedly groping a civilian employee at the West Texas base. Following the conviction and sentencing, the victim in the case went public to charge that her long-standing complaints about Allen were initially ignored by base officials and other chaplains. Earlier this month, lawmakers from both parties in both houses of Congress offered bills that would have transferred a commander's authority to convene court-martial and refer sexual charges in assault cases to military prosecutors in the Judge Advocate General Corps. Military education programs are just not enough at this point. The Army has initiated collaborative efforts on TBI and PTSD. Over the last 12 years, many soldiers have returned from Iraq and Afghanistan with wounds, some visible and some not. The invisible wounds, post-traumatic stress disorder, and traumatic brain injury are just as damaging as the visible ones. They impact the families as well as the soldiers. As part of its collaborative effort, the Army is participating in a $60 million research study for TBI, sponsored by the National Football League, General Electric, and athletic apparel manufacturer Under Armour. Also, $700 million has been allocated toward both PTSD and TBI as the result of a White House executive order for a renewed effort in collaboration with the Veterans Affairs Department and other organizations. Additionally, the Army has set up 7 restorative centers in Afghanistan where TBI can be identified and treated, often allowing soldiers to stay in theater as they improve. They are also researching the relationship between traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress. With the continued support and encouragement of organizations like Honor for All, the Army and this nation have made enormous strides in treating this injury, removing the stigma and instilling dignity in our recovering veterans. But more work must be done. Honor for All, a nonprofit organization sponsoring the event, is dedicated to eliminating the stigma of PTSD and supports research into finding the causes and treatment of the disorder. And recently, the remains of a U.S. Army soldier from Missouri who disappeared in Korea in 1950 have been identified and returned to his family in Arkansas. Corporal Marvin Omans' remains arrived by Friday in Little Rock, where they were met by his sister. Martin's son, Johnny Martin, provided DNA that helped identify Omans' body. Oman was born in Missouri. He disappeared December 1, 1950, while on patrol. His remains were among 200 to 400 given to the U.S. between 91 and 94. Funeral services with full military honors will be held at the Arkansas State Veterans Cemetery in North Little Rock. We are going to go to a commercial break, and when we come back, I will talk with my guest, Eric Fitzsimmons, the CEO of I Employ Veterans, a company whose mission is to create and distribute a full line of food, beverage, and clothing products with proceeds used to create jobs for our veterans. I only wish more companies would grasp this concept. Eric has created a company like no other. Stay tuned, you don't want to miss how you too can help our veterans through Eric's company.
You're watching Amador County's local television network, TSPN.